A female cop helped a disabled girl every morning until her father walked in with 4 bodyguards. The first time Officer Sarah Malik noticed the disabled girl, it was raining hard enough to blur the city into streaks of gray, and the child stood at the edge of the crosswalk like a forgotten promise, her thin legs trembling, her school bag soaked, her eyes fixed on the traffic lights, as if they might betray her at any second. Cars rushed past without slowing, horns barked, engines growled, and in that chaos, Sarah felt something tighten in her chest because she recognized that look. The look of someone used to waiting for help that rarely came. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet heroes who change lives without asking for applause, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to KH Stories, because stories like this only survive when people choose to care. Every morning after that, Sarah adjusted her patrol route without telling anyone. She told herself it was practical, that the intersection near the old apartment blocks needed monitoring anyway, but the truth was simpler and heavier. The girl was there every weekday at the same time, her right leg stiff, her left foot dragging slightly, her balance uncertain as she leaned on a worn-out metal crutch. Her name, Sarah later learned from the school records she checked one quiet afternoon, was Ayesha Khan, 9 years old, living with her father in a cramped apartment after her mother had died years earlier from an illness no one talked about anymore. The city knew how to move fast and forget faster, and Ayesha was one of those children who could easily vanish into the cracks if no one noticed. Sarah noticed everything. She noticed how Ayesha flinched when cars honked too close, how she always arrived early because walking slowly meant leaving home before dawn, how her uniform was always clean but clearly repaired again and again by careful hands. Sarah never made a show of helping. She didn't want to embarrass the child or turn kindness into a performance. She simply stood beside her, stopped traffic with a raised palm, walked at her pace, and waited until Ayesha reached the other side safely. Some mornings they exchanged shy smiles, some mornings only nods, and many mornings nothing at all except the shared rhythm of crossing the street together. Sarah's own life was far from gentle. She worked long shifts, dealt with colleagues who still questioned whether a woman truly belonged in uniform, and returned each night to a small apartment that echoed with loneliness. Her parents lived far away. Her last relationship had collapsed under the weight of her unpredictable schedule, and there were nights when the silence felt louder than sirens. Helping Ayesha became a quiet anchor, a reminder that her badge was not just about authority but about service, about being present when someone needed stability. Weeks turned into months. Rain gave way to heat, then to the brittle cold of early winter. Sarah noticed changes in Ayesha too. The girl's shoulders straightened slightly, her steps grew more confident, and she began arriving with a faint spark of anticipation rather than fear. Teachers at the nearby school started greeting Sarah with appreciative nods, though none of them knew the full story. To them, it was just a cop being decent. To Ayesha, it was safety woven into routine, a promise that the world might not always rush past her. But not everyone saw it that way. A few parents complained about traffic delays. One supervisor casually suggested Sarah focus on real police work. Sarah swallowed her frustration, reminded herself why she wore the uniform, and continued anyway. She had learned long ago that doing the right thing often meant doing it quietly, without validation. One particularly cold morning, Ayesha didn't show up. Sarah waited longer than usual, scanning the sidewalk, feeling an unexpected unease settle in her bones. When the light changed and no small figure appeared, Sarah crossed alone, her boots sounding too loud against the wet pavement. The absence lingered with her all day, a small hollow worry she couldn't explain. The next day, Ayesha returned, thinner somehow, her face paler, her crutch wrapped with tape to keep it from breaking. Relief washed over Sarah, followed by a sharp anger at a world where a child had to struggle this hard just to reach school. Sarah began quietly helping more. She spoke to a school counselor, ensured Ayesha received accommodations, slipped extra snacks into her bag without being obvious. She never asked questions about the father. She assumed he worked long hours, like so many others, trying to survive in a city that offered little mercy. Then came the morning that shattered the routine. It began like any other, with dawn barely lifting and the air heavy with anticipation of rain. Sarah stood at the intersection, ready, scanning for Ayesha, but instead of the familiar small figure, a black luxury SUV rolled to a stop nearby, its engine humming with restrained power. Another vehicle followed, then another. 4 men stepped out first, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark suits, their movements synchronized and alert. People slowed. Whispers rippled through the street. Sarah's training kicked in instantly, her posture shifting, her hand hovering near her radio. And then the father stepped out. He was a man in his early 40s, impeccably dressed, his presence commanding without a word. His eyes scanned the area with a sharpness that suggested authority and control, and when they landed on Sarah, they lingered. There was no anger in his expression, but there was intensity and something else beneath it. Emotion carefully restrained. The bodyguards remained still, forming an unspoken barrier around him as he walked toward the crosswalk. Sarah felt exposed in a way she hadn't before. Every small act she had done, every quiet kindness, suddenly felt enormous under the weight of those watching eyes. She braced herself for confrontation, for accusation, for being told she had crossed some invisible line. Ayesha emerged then, stepping carefully from behind the SUV, her crutch clicking softly against the pavement. She looked up at Sarah, her face lighting with relief and familiarity, and in that instant, Sarah understood that whatever happened next, she would not regret a single morning she had spent standing there. The father observed the way Ayesha instinctively moved closer to Sarah, the way her shoulders relaxed. He saw the unspoken trust between them. Traffic waited. The city held its breath. What Sarah did not know was that Ayesha's father was a man who controlled empires